Well, there is breaking news out of Newport News, Virginia tonight. There was a terrifying shooting inside an elementary school late this afternoon. A female teacher was rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries, and a student, we are just learning, 6 years old, was taken into custody after the shooting at Richneck Elementary.
The altercation was between a 6-year-old, the student who did have the firearm, and the teacher, and then a round was fired.
Just stunning to hear that. Police say the shooting was not accidental, and they're investigating where the young boy got that handgun.
McCrae offered only a few words.
No, I have remorse for my actions. So I apologize to my family and the courts. That's all I can say.
The judge sentenced McCrae to 30 to 60 years for second-degree murder.
This video is part 2 of how Hollywood is reshaping America.
Latest on the shocking killing of the high school math teacher, a 14-year-old student you see there under arrest right now.
Just after 3 p.m., Colleen Ritzer leaves her classroom and walks a little down the hallway. She's smiling, everything's fine. And then you see a shadow in the doorway of her classroom. A boy then leaves the classroom, hovers outside for a moment, and it looks as though he's looking around, seeing who's around. And that boy was 14-year-old Philip Chisholm. He lingers for a moment, watching in the direction that Colleen's just walked. He's watching her walking into the girls' bathrooms at the end of the hallway. Philip walks back into the classroom just for a brief moment and then emerges again, but now he has his hood pulled up and he is walking in the direction that he just saw Colleen leave in. As he gets closer to the bathroom, you can clearly see that he's holding a pair of gloves in his hands, and he puts them on as he enters the room where Colleen is.
Investigators say Philip Chisholm killed Colleen Ritzer around 3:30 p.m. Tuesday, reportedly with a box cutter in the school's faculty bathroom, and that surveillance cameras show him using what appears to be a recycling bin to move her body to the woods.
Is Hollywood possibly contributing to the increase in violence in America, especially among teens?
Walmart is announcing it is temporarily removing advertising displays for violent video games following the recent mass shootings.
Recently, when President Trump implicated violent video games in mass shootings, shares of major video game companies fell sharply.
We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace.
So the question is, are violent games actually doing something bad to us?
When a company puts out a product that is selling like gangbusters, chances are they're going to want to keep putting it out. Well, the product of Hollywood is its movies, and like it or not, what sells quite often is violence. That said, polls suggest that most Americans, the same Americans who buy all those tickets, think movies are too violent. So what does Hollywood think?
In the previous video, we looked at how Hollywood systematically and covertly undermines the deity of Jesus Christ while replacing God with false gods.
What was Jesus like? I'm curious. Was he cool?
At this moment in our civilization, we can create cybernetic individuals who, in just a few short years, will be completely indistinguishable from us. Which leads to an obvious conclusion. We are the gods now.
It's time for a man to use absolute power for the cause of ultimate peace. It's time for a man to rid the world of conflict and allow all men and women, young and old, to live in tranquility. It is time for man to become God where God has failed.
We have that video linked in the end screen of this video. This video will show how violent Hollywood films, video games, music, and TV programs promote and normalize violence, and the impact on Americans, particularly young ones, is frightening. Keep watching till the end, because what we discovered is mind-boggling.
Joining me now is John MacArthur, Grace Community Church pastor. Pastor MacArthur, it's good to see you tonight. I immediately thought of you because I wanted to ask you what you thought was at the heart of this. These inner city youths, this is happening across America. How did things get this bad?
Well, I think you know, Laura, that humanity is capable of some horrendous crimes, whether it's killing a senior citizen or bombing a hospital full of children in the Ukraine. And God has built into society some restraints. The first restraint is the knowledge of God, that there is a righteous and holy judge to whom we are accountable. Beyond that, there is the law of God written in the heart. Every culture knows what is right and wrong because universally that's part of being created in God's image. There's the conscience. We have a society basically that has removed God, so that transcendental restraint is gone. Next restraint is the family. Destroy the family, and there's no opportunity for disciplined raising of children to make them socially capable of interacting in a positive way. The family falls apart, and the next barrier is the police, and by then it's beyond them. The young in this society have smashed every divine restraint down. The culture is so immoral, so against the family, so against God, and you sow that and you reap exactly what we get today.
Please help us spread biblical truth. Subscribe and enable the bell icon to be notified when we publish new weekly videos. Like and share our videos. God bless you.
One of the most powerful storytellers on earth is definitely Hollywood, that entertains the entire planet. In ancient Rome, they were also dominated by entertainment in the amphitheater. But it was a little different to the entertainment of today. Human lives at the gladiator shows were killed as a form of entertainment to appease the high number of spectators in the crowd. The entertainment today is strikingly similar, where we have a desire to see other human beings slaughtered on the screen. But the world has become like the Roman arena, where we are trained to enjoy other human beings suffer and beaten to a pulp. The late American writer Kurt Vonnegut Jr. said that one of the few good things about modern times is that if you die horribly on television, you will not have died in vain. You will have entertained us. An advisor on the film set The Gladiator, in a question and answer in the New York Times, compared ancient Rome's amphitheater to modern-day entertainment, and said that the Roman arena catered to an instinct in human nature that is attracted by the suffering and bloodletting of others. And this is certainly an element that is deployed in the modern entertainment media.
Once you normalize violence through movies and shows, slowly but surely, people will start to place little to no value on human lives. The Bible makes it clear that life is sacred because God is the creator. For anyone still unsure whether violent video games, movies, and TV shows have any adverse effect on people, especially young people, keep watching because we will show you what the experts say on this issue.
Academy Award-winning cinematographer and director Haskell Wexler found out when he turned his camera on some of the biggest names in the movie business.
Yes, people like violence in films, and they find violence in films exhilarating.
We're feeding ourselves violence, and that's all we can get back from it.
I'm almost to the point where I don't want my kid to watch television, for a lot of reasons, violence being one.
Quentin Tarantino, an American film director, writer, producer, and actor, admits he is a big fan of action and violent movies. However, he fails to realize that violent movies have negatively impacted many Americans, especially young people.
I'm a big fan of action and violence in cinema. I always said that it was almost as if it was one of the reasons Thomas Edison invented the camera, was to film violence, right? Because it's so good. What I'm about is playing the audience. I feel like I'm the orchestra conductor and the audience's reaction are my orchestra. And the sounds you make are my instruments, and your feelings are my instruments. And so it's like, I want to, so it's like, laugh, laugh, laugh. Stop laughing. Stop laughing. Okay, now be horrified. Be horrified. This is horrible. This is horrible. This is horrible, horrible, horrible. Laugh. And that's what I want to do. That's what I get off doing.
But by getting that reaction, okay, I may be being far too heavy about this here, but is there a sense in which some of your violence I find really difficult to watch? I mean, you see a lot of violence in cinema, but even just going back to Reservoir Dogs, you know, man bleeding in the back of a cab, or whatever it is, really unsettling. There are bits in Inglourious Basterds, really unsettling. Is that because you never want people to forget the capacity, if you like, for humans to harm one another?
No, I think you're arguing too heavy with it, as far as I'm concerned.
I thought maybe I was.
Yeah, no, I don't have concerns or thoughts like that. If a guy's shot in the stomach and he's bleeding like a stuck pig, I want to see him bleeding like a stuck pig. That is now the situation they're dealing with.
Those who think movies are just made for entertainment should better think again. Hollywood is gradually controlling people's minds and emotions. When people are bombarded with violent media from childhood to adulthood, we end up with a society full of troubled minds with distorted views of reality.
Neuroscientists are looking at how we watch movies to figure out which styles of filmmaking have maximum control over viewers' brains. It's popularly being called neurocinema.
In this interview, Quentin Tarantino encouraged parents to take their 12-year-old girls to see a movie glorifying violence, arguing that it would empower girls. Unbelievable.
Really, Quentin, would you say this movie teaches girls to be empowered by being violent and vicious, just like boys in the movie? Would you say that's the empowerment?
It empowers women, but it empowers girls by the fact that Uma Thurman is a female warrior. She's a female avenger. Right. Revenge is like one of the classic staples in drama.
I see, but a lot of innocent people. I've seen the film,
and to have
Quentin.
girls not be not only the girlfriends in movies, but this is a movie about women. They're not about cute girls going.
It's about killer women.
All right, with their butts and their T-shirts that stop before.
He kept dodging the interviewer's question about why he would encourage young girls to see a movie about women being killed by boys.
Why the need for so much gruesome, graphic violence? Why not let us imagine
Because it's so much fun, Jan.
Really?
Get it?
Oh, really? Okay, I'd like to see you walk down the street and get attacked by some kids who've just seen your movie.
But see, Jan, you're all messed up because you're talking about real life.
Oh,
and I'm
I see.
talking
And kids
about
at
the
12,
movies. You got to get it straight. Now, if you want to talk about the movies, we'll talk about the movies.
Okay, and kids
at 12
can
about real life,
tell
we'll
the
talk about real
difference.
life.
Kids at 12 can tell the difference. You tell their parents that, Quentin.
Kids go to a movie theater, they can tell the difference. Maybe you couldn't when you were a kid, but I could.
Okay, honey. We're getting the hook. You're doing well, obviously. You're laughing all the way to the bank, and I know some
I'm
parents
having
would
a
love
great
to talk
time
to
making
you.
a terrific movie that people are having fun seeing. Maybe not you, but you know what, Jan? I don't think I made it for you.
I bet you didn't, and I'm glad you didn't. I'm just sorry.
Well, don't worry about that, baby.
We'll move on. You're doing great. What do you care about me? All right, Quentin. Well, look, it's your genre. You own it. It's your genre, and you own it. And that's why he's Quentin Tarantino doing so well. And this is a movie that he thinks kids should see. And I'm on the record saying I do not think kids should see it. I think adults who see it should be warned. It's very violent, incredibly violent, and soulless. There's no soul in it. And I wonder how he sees women being empowered when there's no soul.
When a 14-year-old boy puts to practice what he learned from Hollywood movies by brutally murdering his high school, he gets 40 years in prison, while people like Quentin Tarantino, who encouraged such acts through his violent movies, laugh all the way to the bank. The sad state of America. John Hinckley Jr., who shot President Ronald Reagan on March 30, 1981, was obsessed with the movie Taxi Driver.
It's still in question what role violence in movies really play on what people actually go out and do.
If you believe Hollywood movies do not promote real-life violent crimes and behaviors, think again.
An average child today, by the time he's finished elementary school, has seen something like 8,000 murders and 100,000 acts of graphic violence on movies and in television. And I don't think there's any way to calculate the kind of effect that can have because there's no precedent. That's never happened before.
We're ending up with a couple of generations of kids that nothing triggers in their mind when they see an act of violence, a senseless act of violence that says, no, this is not right. What you will get most often in the theaters is, whoa, oh my, did you see that?
We have an enormous responsibility because the medium does influence. I think there's always going to be a responsible filmmaker.
Through its violent movies, Hollywood has succeeded in embedding in many Americans' minds the idea that the end justifies the means. In other words, it is morally acceptable if it takes extreme violence for the good guy to take out the bad guy.
The bad guy very often is the more interesting role. And yet you have anti-heroic, outlaw good guys. I was just talking to somebody today about how you see Bruce Willis is a very good example of somebody who has made a career out of having the suspect up against the wall, who you know is some dirtbag, and the captains and the police commissioners are there, and he says, "Yeah, Sarge, I'm just going to ask him a couple questions, I'll be right back." Boom, all right, dirtbag, and you're loving it because he's taking the law into his own hands.
The bad guys are established as so vile just so that the technological violence that the good guy wields nowadays is warranted. So suddenly, there's like a scum fest on screen.
If I had the budget on an average Schwarzenegger film for blood, I could make 2 good films.
Hollywood is all about indoctrination and money. As long as people watch violent movies, Hollywood will keep making more, even when they're aware that their films encourage people to commit violent crimes.
Everything has to be geared toward one weekend. Do you make the big numbers on the one weekend? And all they see is the big action pictures are making the big bucks on the weekend for the weekend grosses. And they don't really care anymore, because if your movie doesn't make it that first weekend, they pull all the theaters, all your publicity, all your theaters are pulled out, and you have no movie.
The studio doesn't seem to be happy with hitting singles, doubles, and triples. They want to hit home runs every time out.
What they're looking for is the blockbuster, and what the blockbuster is gotten by blowing up the block.
Really, I mean, some movies are just like, you can't believe it. You just sit there and it's just, someone's head exploding, someone getting shot, someone getting stabbed over and over and over again. And I mean, I'm sitting in the movie theater with my hand over my eyes.
I mean, there's times I would sit there and say, God, all these movies are such crap.
They are making millions and millions and millions of dollars off of the ruination of the children of the world. And that's the bottom line. It's all about money.
You heard it from the horse's mouth. It's all about the money. The Bible warns that the love of money is the root of all evil, which, while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. 1 Timothy 6, verse 10.
I went to a luncheon a few days later, and there were 24 women at the luncheon. A quarter of them had been held up at gunpoint.
I mean, we tell kids that we've got to get the guns out of their hands, but meanwhile, every single poster, every single bus stop has Arnold Schwarzenegger or Bruce Willis or somebody standing there with a gun pointing at you, and they're a hero, and they're somebody that we love. They're somebody we cheer for. So why wouldn't you want to emulate them?
In our time, in the last generation or so, the message somehow gets through that you're not responsible, that whatever goes wrong is somebody else's fault. And the acceptance of responsibility, I think, is crucial to civilization. Individual responsibility.
We agree with him 100%. Hollywood actors, producers, directors, and financiers must be individually held accountable for the increasing level of violence in America today. Equally important, Christians who identify as followers of Jesus Christ must stop calling these violent films entertainment and refrain from supporting Hollywood.
As people, we have to make it unpopular. We have to not watch. We have to not pay for it.
As long as you're there to buy that ticket, they will make that movie. They don't care. Hollywood does not care what your children see.
You've repeatedly heard from those at the forefront of making these movies that violent movies are more than entertainment. These movies are destroying innocent lives and society at large. When Christians pay to see these violent films, they indirectly encourage and support the violence we see daily in America and across the globe. That's as simple and as honest as we can put it, and we pray that the Lord will give you understanding.
I can't make those movies anymore. I can't make another piece of art that glorifies violence and bloodshed and brutality. I can't contribute another stone to this landslide of dehumanizing rage that has swept across this country like a pestilence. That's a mixed metaphor, isn't it? Anyway, I'm done. Kaput, fini. No more exploding bodies, exploding buildings, exploding anything.
Jesus teaches us to forgive and not seek revenge. But I say unto you which hear, love your enemies, do good to them which hate you, bless them that curse you, and pray for them which despitefully use you. Luke 6, verses 27 and 28. Apostle Paul reminds us in Romans 12, verse 19, not to seek revenge. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. But what does Hollywood teach us?
Here's a little holiday greeting I've been wanting to send to the Mandarin. I just didn't know how to phrase it until now. I know you're a coward. There's no politics here, it's just good old-fashioned revenge.
It doesn't matter how far you run. There are some demons you just can't escape.
Look here, my son. You know me. I am what I am, and I'm not going to change now.
It's not what you did, son. It's who you did it to.
I was 9 when my parents were killed. I will not stop till you feel what I felt all these years.
I want revenge. I want them to know that death is coming. And there's nothing they can do to stop it.
When liberals scream, do something after a mass shooting, why aren't we also dealing with the fact that the average American kid sees 200,000 acts of violence on screens before the age of 18? And that, according to the FBI, one of the warning signs of a potential school shooter is a fascination with violence-filled entertainment. It's funny, Hollywood is the wokest place on earth in every other area of social responsibility. There's a pie chart of why mass shootings happen. The major ones are mental health, easy access to guns, kids having smartphones, and yes, crazy amounts of gun violence in movies and TV. Here's a list of just the action movies that have vengeance in the title. Blind vengeance, bitter vengeance, cry vengeance, sweet vengeance, dark vengeance, fast vengeance, blue vengeance, forced vengeance, heated vengeance, naked vengeance, acts of vengeance, deadly vengeance, out for vengeance, bound of vengeance, fistful of vengeance, streets of vengeance, angel of vengeance, ministry of vengeance, with a vengeance, codename vengeance, fort vengeance, kickboxer vengeance, ninja vengeance. And taste of vengeance.
In case you glossed over it, listen to this clip again.
According to the FBI, one of the warning signs of a potential school shooter is a fascination with violence-filled entertainment.
Yes, Hollywood violent content does inspire real-life violence, including mass shootings.
The problem I see is that there is this celebration of criminality. There's this acceptance of criminality and thuggery, and that's a problem.
Well, Chicago police have released the latest numbers on gun violence in the Windy City. According to that data, Chicago has seen 195 murders and nearly 1,000 shootings so far this year, and we're only in May.
Yeah, look at what's happening in Chicago. It's unspeakable, and the numbers are outrageous. People will say, yeah, well, of course, most white people are murdered by white people as well. But number one, the murder rate, the sheer number of murders for a people group that make up 12.5% of the population is completely out of whack. Yeah. And number two, the idea of the randomness and violence of it all, something has to be said. My message is that the gospel gives us hope. I'm a pastor, I'm not a politician. I'm not here to make political points. I'm here to point people to the cross and say that there's a way for us to be united.
Thank you.
But we begin tonight with America's crime crisis. A bloody 4th of July weekend ended with at least 267 people killed in shooting incidents. In Chicago, 18 people were killed in shootings involving at least 100 people. Police say in nearly all the incidents, no suspects were taken into custody. In Cleveland, 11 people were shot in a 5-hour period. 8 people were killed in Philadelphia, with 27 others hurt. Denver police reported 5 separate shootings within a 4-hour period. In New York, embattled Governor Andrew Cuomo is taking a drastic step due to the growing gun violence.
While this video focuses on how Hollywood is reshaping America through its violent material, the government and families must also bear some blame for America's culture of violence.
These are real lives that are being slaughtered on the streets of Chicago by bad policies, inept politicians.
Do you think leadership is doing enough to solve this problem?
No. No, I don't think so.
The mayor's office?
No.
The DA?
No. People make decisions from up here, but they need to come down and really look at what's going on in the neighborhoods.
All of these programs and all of this are fine, but what are we doing to help the people? They too busy playing politics.
Our biggest problems here in Chicago is that you can get caught with a gun and tomorrow you'll be out. Within hours you'll be out. There's no consequences.
You know, they got the ankle bracelet, they're still dealing out there.
It's gonna get bigger.
The problem is not the police. Let's go to the root of the problem. You want to fix something? Start at home. Because it all starts in the house.
When parents and grandparents buy their kids toy guns and expose them to violent video games and movies, they create opportunities for kids to become violent and potentially use violent weapons in the future. What about violent video games and teen violence?
We all know about America's rising crime rate, especially violent crime in urban areas. But did you know that an increasing number of these depraved acts are being committed by young teens?
Hi, Laura. Over the past few days, extremely disturbing crimes committed by teens in Chicago. 3 boys, 14 and under, were charged with felony charges of aggravated carjacking of a 50-year-old man. In Ohio, 2 13-year-old boys arrested on rape charges. Here in California, horrifying robbery video in San Francisco Monday. A Chinatown camera store, 3 teens use a hammer trying to smash the glass cases, but they're plexiglass and do not crack.
Do these violent video games really impact kids' behaviors? It all depends on who you ask and who sponsors the research on this subject. However, when you see the gory and violent video game images, no sane human would disagree that violent video games negatively influence kids.
There is zero connection between entertainment and behavior. And that's been studied over and over and over again, and even ruled upon by the Supreme Court.
This was maybe a video game to this evil demon. He wanted to be a super soldier for his Call of Duty game.
What is causing trouble among America's youth in schools? Oh, it has to be a video game. Anyone of thought should find that insulting at the face of it.
Video games give you the skill and the will to kill. It is the moral equivalent of putting a military weapon in the hand of every child in America.
There are a few fundamental types of studies that can be done in these situations: experimental studies, cross-sectional studies, and longitudinal studies. According to many researchers, the evidence is clear. There is a connection between playing violent video games and aggression.
First, they can make us more aggressive. Second, they can make us more numb to the pain and suffering of others. And third, they can make us more afraid of becoming victims of violence ourselves.
Let's start with you, David, because some of these games are really wild. I mean, they're pretty graphic, pretty gory.
The Norway killer trained on those. He said he trained on them. 69 dead on an island in Norway, and he spent a year training on video games to prepare himself for this crime. The killer in Florida, he spent 15 hours a day on violent video games. The most all-consuming, all-pervasive thing in this guy's life are these violent video games. And less than a year ago, the American Psychological Association made a definitive statement. There is a clear, unequivocal link between violent video games, violent behavior. Their blood pressure goes up, their heart rate goes up, violent actions go up. The data is persistent and clear across many different forms. You cannot deny it.
We agree wholeheartedly, so are other well-trained psychologists.
First up today, are kids who play violent video games and watch other violent content more likely to be aggressive?
But we hear, a lot of times we hear conflicting information. You know, we'll hear in the media that it doesn't lead to aggressive thinking or behavior, and then other people will say it does. But really the research is pretty well established.
Really?
That there is an association. There's specific factors that are related to increased aggression or risk for aggression in kids, and media violence is one of them.
How do you define media violence? Because, you know, a lot of us will think, well, is sometimes just, you know, watching a violent news story scary enough for a child?
Right. So what this was looking at in terms of media violence was video games, movies, and television programming. And what's really interesting about this study is not only is it in the United States, but it was a joint study with 6 other countries. So they found this repeatedly, this effect repeatedly across cultures.
The level of violence we see in our society today is partly due to decades of Hollywood's bombardment of American homes with violent content. Parents and grandparents with young children should seriously consider not exposing their kids or grandkids to violent video games, cartoons, or movies. Here are a few things experts suggest you do to protect your kids from exposure to violence.
So what can we do? Know their friends, check the ratings, guidelines, use the parental controls, and be mindful of pre-existing conditions, probably like hyperactivity.
Right, so if you have a child who has ADHD or is prone to tantrums, then it's probably not wise to let them look at the violent media. You know, really follow those guidelines. They're really there for a reason. You can set phones, you can set tablets to only permit certain content to come through.
At a time, but I just want to quickly answer this. What about violent songs? Do you know if that was included in violent media? Okay, it wasn't included.
I wonder about the same things because so many of today's music,
the words,
the lyrics
the things
are
that they're saying.
Aggressive, violent, there's a lot of swear words, negative, mean things.
Indeed, violent songs should also be avoided. They are all part of Hollywood's plan to destroy the traditional American family system. Remember that Satan is behind the violent media. Hollywood is merely a tool the devil uses to promote violence. And the Bible states in John 10, verse 10, what Satan's goal is. The thief cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. When you expose yourself or your children to violent Hollywood media, which most people consider entertainment, you are essentially setting yourself or your kids up for some troubles now or in the future. The consequences may be subtle, but they do manifest in different ways.
You don't see mass shootings of children in many, many countries where Hollywood movies are the key source of entertainment.
Hollywood aggressively targets young children. They bombard the kids with violent images from childhood to adulthood. What you end up with is a country full of men and women who crave violence and have zero respect for parents, teachers, police, and those in positions of authority. This could explain why a 14-year-old student would murder his math teacher in broad daylight, hide her body in a garbage can, and drag her away not at night, but during the day. The sad state of America. We can't stress this enough. There is an agenda behind every single movie Hollywood produces. Hollywood knows it, but most Christians don't.
Edward Bernays wrote a book in 1928 titled Propaganda. He said, if we understand the mechanism and motives of the group mind, is it not possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without their knowing about it? So what is the most effective tool to manipulate the world? The American motion picture is the greatest unconscious carrier of propaganda in the world today. It is a great distributor for ideas and opinions. The motion picture can standardize the ideas and habits of a nation. You may have heard people say, just because I watch a violent film doesn't mean to say I'm going to kill someone. But propagandist Edward Bernays knew that Hollywood was a powerful tool of the US government to influence human behavior.
Taking drastic measures to curb Hollywood violent content is excellent. However, when it's all said and done, violence is a byproduct of sin, and only Jesus Christ can transform a dark and hardened heart because, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. 2 Corinthians 5, verse 17. If you have not yet been born again, cry out to Jesus to save you today. We will see you in part 3 of how Hollywood is reshaping America.